Hi, thank you so much for the welcome, Andy. I'm likewise very excited to be here today talking about DAOs. I think it is really one of the most disruptive, innovative and interesting parts of the Web3 environment. I'm Lisa. As Andy said, I'm a lawyer, and actually I worked as a cooperatives and social economy lawyer for a long time before specializing more in technology law. So what I want to talk to you about today is why it's so interesting to be here in Manchester, in particular, talking about DAOs. So some of you might already know that Manchester is actually the global birthplace of the cooperative movement. Back in 1844, the Rochdale Pioneers were a group of mill workers who set up their own community cooperative shop. And the reason for that was it was really, really hard to buy decent quality food. Often mill owners used to water down their flour with sawdust, and they had pretty meagre wages. So they engaged in self-help, set up their own cooperative, and in so doing, they wrote the Rochdale Principles. And those Rochdale Principles included democracy, one member, one vote in the shop, economic participation by people who shop there, so giving the customers control of the quality of what they purchased, and offering customers honest, good quality food. Those principles were adopted and taken globally into the principles of the International Cooperative Alliance and now underpin trillions of dollars worth of goods and services worldwide. So why is this all relevant? You might be asking, why are we going all the way back to 1844 when we thought we were here talking about wizzy technology and the future of DAOs? Well, the reason for that is that DAOs have many of these same ideals at their heart. It's this ideology of community that we've heard a lot about today, otherwise, of people coming together to find a better solution to broken economies. If you're an athlete competing in the Olympics and everybody else is making a profit, but you're earning nothing, if you're the person who's a creative person in an economy and you're having to wait ages to get paid and you're getting very low wages, meanwhile other people are profiting, it makes a lot of sense to re-engineer and rewire that economy. And I think blockchain, distributed ledger technology, provides us the opportunity to do that. So policymakers have seen this opportunity too. There's been a lot of work ongoing in the UK, the US, the EU to think about the data economy and to look towards the businesses of the future that will connect communities in a powerful way and harness collective human innovation to bring better, different, innovative solutions that help us be more sustainable and create a fairer, more equal, flatter hierarchical economy. So I just wanted to chat through some of the policy work. Actually, I sit on the Law Society's Technology and Law Committee, and there's been a lot of work coming from the Law Commission in the UK. So many of you will know that the UK has ambitions to be a global hub for innovation for artificial intelligence and also for digital asset technologies. In terms of DAOs, there's recently been a policy paper that's very, very good and informative from the Law Commission. They wrote a call for evidence, and I've extracted here some definitions of what a DAO is. Many of you may be wondering, what is a decentralized autonomous organization? There are some common elements to these definitions, use of technology, but also this being a social structure. So it's combining perhaps a tech system that allows you to own tokens, but is also fundamentally aware of the social incentives of participants, why communities would want to get involved and what incentivizes them to provide input and content that benefits the growth and health of the community over the long term. I want to just also note this very last point here where the Law Commission says actually there is no complete authoritative definition of what a DAO is. So if that may bring some of you some comfort as well. But I think this is a challenge for policymakers. There's a really, really wide variety of things that DAOs do. I've just put a few different categories here. They can be used for philanthropy. You've got Gitcoin, where people can put forward proposals to be awarded grants. In terms of regenerative finance, there are projects where one was looking at combining ownership in land, for instance, so that people can be incentivized to invest in nature solutions and perhaps occupy land in a way that's more restorative for nature. KlimaDAO is a registry, effectively a bond registry of carbon offsets, so that businesses can have better access to investment in carbon offsetting projects, basically. You've got also creator economies and virtual worlds, Decentraland as well, so huge variety. But policymakers really need to think about this, because it can be really perilous to get involved in a DAO if you don't really know what legal liabilities and responsibilities you're being exposed to. You might be involved in a project and really support the purposes of that project. And this is common to charities as well. Sometimes you sign up and you think you're helping perhaps by taking on a role where you're looking after the community, but you might accidentally find that you're liable for some regulatory outcome that you didn't necessarily expect. And likewise, projects that want to invest in growth and choose a jurisdiction where to base themselves, maybe that they don't want to have to spend inordinate amounts of time and money figuring out unclear regulatory systems. So definitely it will be really good if the policymakers can come up with a solution for this in the UK. Just very briefly touching on what the problem is at the moment with existing corporations. The predominant structure in the UK is share companies, and share companies are set up basically to prioritise profits for shareholders. This is Companies Act, Section 172. Companies are a little bit like code in a way. It's a system, and the code is set out in the Companies Act 2006 for the most part. Section 172 tells the directors what they're allowed to do. So the director must predominantly promote the success of the company for the benefit of its members. There's been a lot of consideration of this, because over time, you can see that climate change is an issue. We're going through a global biodiversity crisis as well, and people have started to draw some correlation really with the way that companies limited by shares are incentivized to pursue profit without really any focus on anything else. It's like a giant machine just extracting and consuming. So this is just drawing a correlation between the very first limited liability companies being open to people to just set up without needing a royal charter, and increasing greenhouse gas emissions and global temperatures. So maybe some of those other stakeholders that we saw listed on the slide, community, the environment, these cooperative structures that were invented really around the same time as companies, could be part of the solution. There's lots and lots of challenges for DAOs. We mentioned regulatory uncertainty, the fact that you might just start doing something, create something in code, and then you don't really know, is it an unincorporated association maybe? So some of the participants could actually be liable and responsible for things other people do. There's a crypto mixer, Tornado Cash, that was hacked massively recently. The DAO, also back in 2016, was a victim of a hack. So where assets are pooled, that can be a really big risk and a temptation for people to attack a DAO. Asset stripping as well, where somebody perhaps takes over the voting rights and can then extract all of the money that's intended to be dedicated to that community that's been built up over time. But to some extent, actually, legal structures can present a solution to that as well. Cooperatives that we were talking about earlier, they're actually an alternative corporate form to limited liability companies registered with the Financial Conduct Authority. And you can put in place a legal asset lock that protects any assets that are held by that corporate structure and devotes them to the purposes for which the organisation set up. So it's combining technology and law in quite an interesting way. In the Law Commission's paper that I talked about briefly earlier, they go through each limb of the definition of a DAO. They talk about what decentralised means. Does a DAO need to be decentralised? Often organisations are on a journey towards decentralisation, and it can go either way. Something can become less decentralised over time. I've tried to just show a few ideas of areas that could be risks to decentralization. So you've got governance. Perhaps there may be a core team who have more voting rights or special protocol tokens. You could have intellectual property rights that are held by a really key developer. There could be economic requirements as well. So if there's someone in particular who pays for the development and ongoing maintenance of the DAO, that person could be de facto quite powerful. So really, this is an area where the World Economic Forum has proposed a governance toolkit to help people to understand the risks associated with getting involved in a DAO. And I think it would be really great to see something that's more like a checklist, allowing people to understand decentralization and the extent to which something is or is not safe to get involved in, just to be transparent and manage expectations. So what's next? We've seen a lot of work coming out of the Law Commission and the UK Jurisdiction Task Force on tokenization and ways of linking assets to DAOs. DAOs manage assets and resources often. So whatever you're investing in, whether it's property or anything else, that's being looked at. There will be some further consultation actually on cooperatives and friendly societies. So that's something to watch out for. The law is really old. So if they can make that easier for people to navigate, if it can be easier to set up a cooperative, that could be very interesting for people looking to set up a DAO in the UK. And here's just some thoughts about the future. I wondered, are DAOs going to be the corporation of the future for communities? Are people going to come from open source projects and set up DAOs, or will material change come from big organizations adopting some of the principles of DAOs and the working methodologies? Might this, where is the next really big innovation going to come from? And just leaving you with this last quote here, not everything that counts is countable. I really like this quote because I like to think, well, whatever we're automating, actually, there will always be some things that's really hard to track and measure, some things that are really important and valuable. But I hope that by setting up these sorts of technology-mediated social structures, as they're called, we can leave lots of space for people to enjoy being in a community and celebrate what's human and important about project. Thank you.